So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our chancellor and also the principal investigator of this project. And this is Dr. Clyde Sakamoto.
Well, I have the privilege and honor of acknowledging all of the help that we've gotten, and truly, this would not have been possible without the assistance of all of you in the audience, and especially folks from the state of Hawaii's Department of...
What's the today's suit?
I want to thank Margaret Larson and June Chi for being here. Margaret and the whole energy leadership at the state of Hawaii have been instrumental in allowing us to advance this project, and without them, we wouldn't be here today. Want to thank Byron Washam, who couldn't be here today, but has been instrumental as well. He's the Director of Strategic Energy Initiatives at the UCSD. And he's been one of the principals in terms of getting our program here started. Also want to acknowledge a whole host of people, and we have a list here of our partners in the community. And I won't go through them all, but I know that some of you I saw join us in the audience today. Doug McLeod from the County of Maui. Doug, please thank the mayor, our council, and all of the leadership in the county for advancing this agenda. I want to thank Terrell, too. I see Terrell right next to Doug, and we know that there's going to be complexity around how it is that we proliferate electric vehicles around the community, and we're grateful for the candid feedback that we've gotten from the industry around what it is that needs to be considered and done to advance the electric vehicles on Maui. I don't know if I see our friends from Hitachi here. But if you see them, thank them as well for the kind of help that they've given us in terms of providing 80 fast chargers around the community. And this is going to accelerate our progress as well. And so we're looking forward to all of these kinds of developments. If we make progress at all, it'll be because of the collaboration that occurs. And want to especially thank Ann Koo, our project director, who's done yo person's work in terms of the entire project. Ann, thank you. Want to acknowledge Michael Snyder, who's really the point of the spear in heaven in trying to expand the number of electric vehicles on Maui so that we're in a position to look at how Maui might be a demonstration site for the rest of the country and possibly other parts of the world in terms of communities that are configured in the way that we are, that allow electric vehicles to become part of the transportation solutions and really reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we're consuming. Especially in Hawaii, as you know, we still have a $6-7 billion opportunity in terms of reducing our fossil fuel use. I can tell you that we have been making progress with our friends at Johnson Controls, and we've got some folks from Johnson Controls here, Jake, Ron Young. Thank you for the work that you've been doing with our chiller plant. You'll see as you come in a bit of inconvenience in terms of our PV carport that's taking some of our parking spaces away. But that's our effort to reduce our fuel consumption as well in terms of the power side of the equation. It'll save us about $122,000 a year, about over 500 kWh of power that'll get generated by the carport facility. So that's the first tranche of what we're hoping and expecting will occur. And all of this is materializing because of the help that each of you has encouraged all of us to pursue and to develop. So thank you all for joining us. There are lists of people that we want to acknowledge, and I'm going to leave that to Ann to talk a little more specifically about the specific contributions that different working groups have made, different individuals have made, but from the college and our student and our community standpoint, to advance electric vehicles and reduce fossil fuel consumption for the County of Maui. We're very, very grateful for your help, assistance, support, encouragement. So mahalo and aloha.
Thank you, Clyde. All right, thank you. I just want to acknowledge our co-chairs. We organized very quickly after we got the grant our groups into 5 different working groups, and it was up to everyone to sign up to 2 groups they wanted to be part of. And by far, the charging station infrastructure was the largest group because that was the biggest question. How are we going to invest in all this kit that's so unfamiliar to us? And the co-chairs are Doug McLeod from the county, and he's going to be speaking. So Doug, would you stand? Energy Commissioner. And then the other one is Chris Reynolds, but he's not able to be here today. So Troy Konatzer from MECO, Troy, would you stand, is going to be speaking on his behalf. And next was policy and legislation. We started with Don Couch, council member, who stepped down halfway through because of other obligations, and then Mike Morris, president of the YMCA, and Michael Snyder. Michael, would you stand up? He stepped in to help carry out. And this is very important because when we started in late 2011, we didn't really know very much what was going on. And then the legislative session started in January, and there were several EV laws in place up for amendment. And I think now we're a lot more ready. So come January, one possibility is that the charging station, the parking and charging law might come to review for possible enforcement. So I think we need to pay attention to that. And then next is the visitor industry, co-chaired by Ipo Mossman from the county and Carol Ryman. Both of them are no longer here with Maui EVA, but I'd like to recognize the leadership of Terrell Venzel from the Maui Visitors Bureau, sitting next to Doug. And unfortunately, Lisa Paulson, who's now the new director of the Maui Hotel Lodging Association, she was going to come today, but she's not able to make it this morning. And then our residents and local businesses. This group was actually very, very important, it turned out, especially when April last year, it was determined from our conference that, our vision of giving our visitors the perfect EV in paradise really needs our local residents and businesses to get comfortable with this. And so as a result, last year at the 90th County Fair, we had a parade and also a huge booth and 2 EVs on display, and raffled off 5 weekend EV rentals to the credit of Victor Reyes. Victor, would you stand up, please, who organized all that for us? Thank you. And the co-chairs, Charmaine Tavares isn't here today, last minute, not able to make it, but I'd like to ask David Fisher to stand up, co-chair of the residents group. And it just turned out that this is great because, Maui is one degree of separation. So just through word of mouth, we all become evangelists once we get the EV bug. So it's very, very powerful indeed. And finally, outreach and education. Our group was led by Andy Carson, one of our lecturers who's moved to New Zealand, and then Mark Osbeck. Is Mark here today? I think he's away this week. So at that time, we came out with a list of all the EV training there is on the internet. And I'm very glad to say that we have now our head of our continuing education adventure, Dr. Lori Teragawachi, who's agreed to partner with us on, we're going to start a small focus group on discussing what kind of training and workshops we can offer through our continuing education arm, because they have a grant that can help market those courses. All right. And finally, I like to mention several things I'm very excited about. First, BioBeetle Eco Car Rental. They've first to offer EVs for rent on Maui and finalists in a green award competition. Sean Stenschel, would you stand up, please? So they were the first for many of us to try out try the EV. And first the Leaf, and then another Volt. And later on, if you go and talk to Sean, we can help cast votes for them to win another grant to help bring in more EVs. All right. And another, I just learned this morning, Volta Charging, they're putting in charging stations at the Whalers Village, and their model is very unique. There's advertising-based, therefore good for malls, and free charging for anyone that wants to use it. They also won an award, Best of Small Business 2013. And of course, JUMP Smart Maui, personally, I think EV drivers, especially Leaf drivers on Maui, are very, very lucky to have all these fast charging stations, 5 locations on Maui, which brings us to more fast chargers than anywhere else in Hawaii. I see that Jim Burness just walked in, so time for me to introduce. First, I'd like to introduce David Bliss, sitting in the front. He's CEO of Charge Bliss. He appears in the 2nd episode of Maui EVA TV, and he's the sponsor of tomorrow's EV conference in Honua Kai Resort. Jim Burness came and also offered his expertise in one of our many EV forums and seminars. Greg Gao, is Greg here? There you are. Okay, I haven't met him yet, but he's going to talk to us about how to finance charging infrastructure. This is tomorrow. And then Kelvin Kohatsu, would you stand, please? Kelvin in the back over there. What a gem to discover that we have our own EV fleet expert in Hawaii. And this is in Helco, one of the top 50 greenest fleets in the country. He's been working at it very hard, and having EVs in fleets is one of those things we haven't really gotten to talk about, simply because lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, and lack of models for the different fleets that we have. Todd Ritter, CEO of EV Structure. Todd, right there. Todd's company, EV Structure, they're a third-party installer. They install charging stations, but his specialty is mainly multi-unit dwellings, and these are the condos. We haven't gotten to talk about that very much here on Maui yet, and fleets, MUDs, those are all in the future. And finally, Van Wilkins. Is Van here? Okay, I haven't met him either. I just learned yesterday from the BMW dealer manager on Oahu that Van is here going to every single island installing charging stations at BMW dealerships in preparation for the BMW i3, which is 100% electric, and the i8, which is targeted to get here somewhere around March next year. So that's very, very exciting because that uses the other kind of standard. All right. I have to watch my time. This is a poster that Margaret Larson and I gave in May. Can you all see this? I'm just wondering if, June, is it possible to dim the lights up here a little bit more so we could see this poster? You probably won't be able to see it very well, but I'll go through it in the next few slides. But we also presented this at UC Davis at a 2-day transportation conference, basically telling the Department of Energy and all the other 49 states that in Maui, we are doing something very interesting. And I would say, in hindsight, it's one of community education. How do you educate a whole community about EVs and get them comfortable? A lot of other groups, they focus on a core group, few people to get the expertise, and then they panned out. We did something quite unusual. We ourselves were not experts, but we all learned together. So Maui Electric Vehicle Alliance is simply the name of a project, but because of its name, we invited other people to participate. And I'll just go through this quickly. Altogether, there were 16 grants awarded, and we got the smallest one. And we're the ones that actually, the only university to get it. And all this is summarized in a report that was just released. And If it's not linked from our website, I'll put it on soon. And our grant is mainly of planning, not implementation, but we already started implementing. So let me go through our process briefly. We did our stakeholder development in 4 stages, and earlier we saw the different cost-share partners, which means in-kind contribution, in-kind and time, and I have to say Enterprise offered their leaves for us free of charge in Honolulu, and those were very, very good. And Honuakai Resort tomorrow has offered their meeting room and some of their rooms for accommodation and for free, and Grand Wailea as well, which enabled a lot of our guest speakers to come. We established the working groups, and then we built community awareness through public events. And now we need to recruit new stakeholders for implementation. By new stakeholders, I mean the real estate market, property, PUC, bankers, and others that were not included earlier. Okay. So just briefly, that's our vision, and that's the title of our proposal. It's multi-year, so I have to say, even though it's been 2 years, I feel like we've only just started. Yeah, it's a long ride. Yeah. And here was the approach. Debt, through Margaret Larson's leadership, it was top down, and for us, it was bottom up, and it was even more bottom up when we visited the other neighbor islands in February and realized that they didn't have a Maui EVA, okay? And so therefore, their stakeholders weren't organized. So one might be saying, I need a charging station. Another one might be saying, we need cars. But as long as they don't know each other or get together to talk, nothing will happen. And here at Maui EVA, we made sure we had meetings. In fact, we had 17 working group meetings, just about one every week from January all the way to March in 2012. And then our stakeholder development, and again, we talked about this earlier. So our step was first develop the alliance, and then organize meetings, and then engage with events, and have the topic constantly in conversation. We invited the press to be part of us, and they helped us greatly. They really supported us, and thank you, Akaku and MCTV, and also Maui News. We now have also, since January, our own EV column in Maui Weekly. And finally, we documented everything. And this is very important because for newcomers, I was just talking to, is it Aina Ricardo, your wife? Yeah, she was saying that before they moved to Maui, which was 6 months ago, they wanted to get an EV. So they checked out our website, read all about it, and decided, okay, we're going to get one, and here's what we're going to get. So we often forget those people that intend to move to Maui. We think about those people that have lived here a long time, the snowbirds, those that have moved here maybe 3 years ago, right? But what about all those people that want to move to Maui? And I have a feeling that one of the reasons why we have so much interest is because everybody wants to move here. All right. Okay, so webinars, you could see them on our YouTube channel, our reports. And the wonderful thing is we have access to all these experts. EV experts are willing to help us. And I would encourage you, after the meeting, when we all go to Paina, which is on the other side of campus, to have lunch, please join us there. Meet these specialists that have come all the way from mainland and off island and talk to them. The whole EV movement is not just in Hawaii or in the USA, it's worldwide. On Monday, there's the annual EVS 27 conference in Barcelona, Spain, and our project is going to be mentioned by the World EV Cities project, which is an alliance of UC Davis and Rocky Mountain Institute and also the International Energy Agency, as an example of how an island community got together I'm not going to go through this list, but we were supported by a lot of letters of commitment from different companies. And this is just a list of different kinds of stakeholders that it requires. It really takes an entire village. It takes a village for this to happen, yeah? Not just the automaker, auto dealer, and the charging station manufacturer. There are policies, the utility is heavily involved, and you'll hear that from Troy later. Okay. All right. Okay, what's happening right now? Now, the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, in order to meet its targets, it needs 10,000 EVs by 2015. It's almost the end of 2013. And altogether in the entire state, we have only 2,000 plug-in electric vehicles. Okay? How are we going to get there? Of course, this is not linear, but that is a big question. By level 3, we're talking about DC fast chargers. Altogether, at any point in time, 26 cars in the entire state can be charging at the same time. For level 2s, 368 cars, electric vehicles, can be charging at the same time. And the 368 can be either Leafs or Volts. This is a picture of Maui, the EV registration. We started with legacy EVs, and remember back in the 90s, there was a phase in which plug-in electric vehicles, the EV won in the States, and then it died. Who killed the electric car? And retrofits and all that. But the Nissan Leaf didn't start coming in until 2011. So we started already with about 60, okay? And John Simbritz from Nissan USA, he's going to be talking about sales of Leafs later on, and I'll let him talk about that. And he's the Nissan representative of all models of Nissan, not just the Leaf. Okay. Now this is a snapshot of the growth of the blue one is the electric vehicles. And you can see that it has the highest growth rate, but it's kind of distorted because when there's so few numbers, every little change is significant, right? Compared to hybrid gasoline, diesel, EVs are tiny. Now, where are the Leaf owners? We can say that most of them, a third of them, are registered in central Maui, which is Kahului and Wailuku. Next is upcountry. And I just heard from JUMP Smart Maui that they're going to put in a DC fast charger in upcountry. Is that right? So that's very good news because right now there's not a single charging station upcountry. This means you could go downhill through regenerative braking, but you might not necessarily be able to come back if there's no charging in central or elsewhere. Okay. We still need strategic locations, which is in Hana and also Haleakala. I'm just going to find, is Howard Forbes here from Haleakala National Park? Okay, he's not here. All right. And then, right. And then 16% down south, Kihei and Wailea, and then 9% on the west side. Okay. But you can see from this chart that a markedly huge difference in growth, huge growth in EV. Okay. All right. I actually wanted to talk about this afterwards, about lessons learned and best practices, but now, so I will now turn the podium to Margaret Larson from Dept. Margaret is the Energy Transportation Specialist. Transportation Energy Specialist. Margaret.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Ann. Good morning. Good to see everyone. So I wanted to kind of give an overview as to what the State Energy Office's role in this grant was, and continues to have, although the grant's come to an end now, but how we continue to support Maui EVA. In terms of background, when what we had signed on to do was to write a report, and the report would document the lessons that we've learned along the way of having a successful EV industry here, but really also to document what's gone on in Hawaii across the EV market. So starting with just kind of general background about electric vehicles and talking about what had occurred in the 90s, where we were at with the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative and our energy goals, as well as talking about our grid and HECO and kind of a lot of background. And then we dove into the actual case study, which talked about the stimulus program that we had, our EV Ready program, that was supported by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And with that, we had a grant program and a rebate program that helped to install and facilitate the installation of charging stations across the state, as well as rebates to support electric vehicles. And by having those two programs, we really learned a lot in terms of the early adopter industry, both on the consumer driver side as well as the site hosts, so businesses that were installing charging stations. There were a lot of lessons that were learned that came out of those projects that weren't necessarily documented along the way. And so we wanted to make sure that we documented those lessons learned and case studies so we could share our story with not only the rest of the U.S., but also just here in the islands. So that was the goal of the project, is to document. What we ended up doing was just that. And also one of the goals was to maybe try to document prior to as early or as quick as possible and get this report done so we can transfer it to Maui EVA, so then they would have all that knowledge and be able to build off of that. In terms of timing, it didn't quite work out that way. You could imagine, just in terms of how we work in government. But nonetheless, what we ended up doing was kind of working in parallel. So while I was writing the report, Anne would call me up and say, like, I need all this background, or how does this work? And then as I was writing the report, I would kind of just start feeding her sections, and she would be learning at the same time as I was capturing all the lessons learned. And I also realized that a lot of the charging station vendors who had participated in the grant program didn't necessarily come out with their own case study reports, and so I contacted a lot of them to capture their lessons learned. That top-down, bottom-up approach was really successful in terms of from my personal perspective, the only folks in the state who knew anything about electric vehicles was the state, both the Energy Office, as well as there was the Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation Technologies, basically a garage that had been doing vehicle conversions for many years. So it was really the state and our utility, who had experience in the past, some of the new charging station vendors who were coming into town, and Clean Cities. And other than that, there weren't really too many places to go to understand how this world worked. And now all of a sudden there's this whole market coming up, and all these questions were being asked. And so there really was a need for Maui EVA, and there was a need for more EV associations on the neighbor islands. So I needed to basically take my brain and give it to Anne, so then she could pick it in and then bring it to the neighbor islands. So we kind of worked in tandem in that way. In terms of writing the report, something that was really important that everyone should kind of pay attention to, that you probably already know, but to document your lessons learned and your case study early and often, something that I wasn't doing along the way. It was part of my job with some of my colleagues who are here in the room to help manage that program, the grant and the rebate program. And along the way, we maybe were taking notes here and there, but we weren't officially documenting anything. So it was really helpful to go back and document all of the lessons learned in this case study report. And I think that's so important because we like to tout us as leaders here in Hawaii in terms of EV industry leaders or clean energy leaders. If you don't have anything really to show for it in terms of a document, then it's just verbal or whatnot. So it's really helpful to have a report where people can read and really understand everything in one spot. And documenting early so you remember what you're doing, and often. So we make sure to capture everything. Based off of that, our partnership and the lessons that we learned of where the gaps were and what was missing, the State Energy Office partnered with Honolulu Clean Cities to develop a smartphone application. And that application is available now. It's called EV Stations Hawaii, and it's available on Android and iPhone apps. And it shows all the charging stations that are in Hawaii and their any restrictions or mapping directions, et cetera. So that was kind of a direct project, is that something that we were hearing from Ann is like, oh, there's such a need to tell everyone where these charging stations are. And all I really had was like an Excel spreadsheet, and it was kind of crazy. And, you know, maybe there are private companies that are doing, you know, a better job in terms of documenting where these stations are, like PlugShare. I know a lot of folks use that one. But, you know, where do they get their information? And they could be fly-by-night. They could, you know, shut down tomorrow. We don't know. So really what our energy administrator wanted was some leadership in having a state-owned and managed app that would be managing the data. And so that was basically something I was hearing from Ann, that it was a need. And so we were able to partner with Clean Cities to make that happen. Something else that I learned along the way, although I kind of knew it, but it was reinforced, is when Ann and I went to Knoxville, Tennessee for the grant partners wrap-up of all the other clean cities and groups that had received this funding. And what we had learned is that we continue to stay competitive in the market, and that in some areas we are leaders, but in most areas we are really maintaining consistency with our peers in other states or counties or alliances. So that's really good news, is that everyone's confused on the same topics, and everyone seems to have a handle on others, and we can really learn from each other. So it's nice to know that we kind of are right in the pack, which is great. And again, some areas we are leaders in, and then, you know, they can learn from us in that way. So I'd encourage you guys, if you haven't already taken a look at the report, or if you ever need to kind of share our story in terms of trying to, you know, sell your product or whatever you're into in terms of the industry, is to take a look at the lessons learned report. It has a lot of great background. It was published December of last year, so the information is current. Some of the data in there is a little bit not current because our industry continues to evolve so quickly. But it's available on the State Energy website, electricvehicle.hawaii.gov, and electric vehicle spelled out singular. And then you go to resources, and reports are in there. And I think Ann also has it available on the Maui EVA website. And within that document, there are a variety of lessons learned, again, from industry that they had learned while installing the charging stations. So from permitting to installing, from level 2s to fast chargers. And so a lot of those are kind of those early adopter lessons learned, but they still remain current because we are still in an early adopter phase, especially on the neighbor islands. So it's helpful to take a look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. I just want to say a little bit about what Clean Cities is. When we first started, I really didn't know what Clean Cities was. Clean Cities is a name of a program, would you say? It's 10 years now, started by Department of Energy, and there are now 100 clean cities. In Hawaii, we have Honolulu Clean Cities, and they get limited funding, annual funding from the Department of Energy. And they're there for information. What else? Advocacy?
Yeah. Does this work? Request to speak?
Yes. Your microphones work.
Is it working right now?
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's working. But you have to press it down continuously. Yeah.
So the Department of Energy created the Clean Cities program about 25 years ago in response to the energy EPAC of 94 or whatnot. Any case, what's become of that is over 100 coalitions that are either for-profit or nonprofit, all with the goal and mission to reduce petroleum and transportation. And Honolulu created the Clean Cities in '95, with again the goal to reduce petroleum and transportation, both focusing on education and outreach, some legislation, and really projects and working with local fleets and partners to find ways to incorporate alternative fuels or advanced vehicles. I helped to coordinate the program, and Jun Chi will be speaking next, helps to manage many of the programs there as well. And this grant was actually a Clean Cities grant. So out of the Department of Energy, the Clean Cities program offers usually 1 or 2 grants a year, where anyone can really participate in the grant, but you have to be partnered with the Clean Cities. So that's kind of how we got involved with Maui EVA on the Clean Cities side, is that UH Maui realized that the grant existed and they wanted to go out for it. And then they gave Columbia Clean Cities a call and said, hey, we want to do this, we need to partner with you.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jun Chi, who's an intern at Honolulu Clean Cities and finishing her MBA, but also she's the author of a report on lessons learned from charging station hosts in Oahu. We wish we could do that report here on Maui. We need that. So, Jun.
Thank you, Anne. Like Margaret and Anne said, Honolulu Clean Cities partnered with Maui EVA to produce the Lessons Learned report, which captured electric vehicle charging station installations from the perspective of Oahu's commercial properties. So this report, we surveyed and interviewed 22 properties, which made up about 76 electric vehicle charging stations, to really capture the whole beginning and end process of getting a charging station into a public parking lot or structure. And we asked them questions regarding planning and permitting, installation, costs and payments, managing the charging station, and then business aspects, how it affected the business that they were running. So some major takeaways we got from this report is that early adopters, they really did a lot of research before they installed their charging stations. They talked to industry professionals and really wanted to find a charging station that fit with the business that they were running and worked for the customers that they have. We realized and learned that there is no one standard currently for installing and managing public charging stations, and that each of these early adopters were kind of feeling it out and figuring out the practices and standards that would work best for them. Some major installation concerns that all the properties had included construction and electrical load. We found that 95% of the properties reported that they only had to complete electrical routing, and 86% of the properties had enough building electrical capacity, and so they didn't have to do upgrades, which was great news for them. 88% of properties reported that following the installation of the charging, the maintenance and operation was really manageable, and that a lot of the charging station companies really assisted them with that in helping them manage the charging stations. And 77% of properties at the time, so this report was published October 2012, and at the time, none of the properties were asking their drivers to pay for charging. I know that is definitely changing now, and they were going to consider making their drivers pay for charging once they got more use. So other than that, this report we found was really helpful. And like Anne mentioned, Maui should definitely try and find research about this and interview the Maui commercial properties to find out, their best practices and see how it differs from Oahu's commercial property owners. Northern Indiana Clean Cities is currently doing a report really similar to this, and they're trying to understand the installations from the commercial properties perspective as well. So you can find this report at, thank you, Anne, at honolulucleancities.org under EV Publications. And I also brought a couple with me, so if there's anyone really interested and wants to take one back with them, feel free. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, June. Thank you, June. So June worked on this project from the very beginning. She and Margaret were there at our kickoff, which was November 1st, 2011 at the Grand Wailea, where the first vault rolled in, or was driven in by Tim Torres of Jim Falk Motors. And for many of us, we had never seen an electric vehicle before. All the doors were open, the hood was open, the trunk was open, you name it, and we're just poking at it, Can I just see a show of hands? How many of you have driven a plug-in electric vehicle? Just raise your hands. This is amazing. I mean, if I had asked that question then, probably just a handful, and they wouldn't be on Maui. They would be from elsewhere. So I'd like to now introduce Doug McLeod, our Energy Commissioner, who at the very beginning had to struggle with some very important industry questions for the industry to solve. And one of that is the DC fast charging standard. He's going to give us some insights to the DC charger at the county.
Well, anyway, thank you. And I'm here today in part because I did participate in the working group, but I want to be clear that the comments I'm going to give you today are really from the mayor's office, and I'm not trying to speak for the other people on the group. Ann asked me to come and really talk a little bit about lessons learned. And when you think about that, you could take, I guess, either a negative view of that topic or a positive view. And I guess the negative view would be to focus on, disagreements or issues people had with the language of the reports. But we're going to take the opposite approach today, and we're really going to talk about where we're going and kind of what we've learned. So let's go ahead to the first slide if we can. If you don't remember anything else from today, what I would encourage you to remember is that the EV infrastructure on Maui is going to look much more like Japan than most places on the mainland. And that's happened for a number of reasons, but at the end of the day, it comes down to the Chademo standard. You'll see in the second bullet here, originally it was charge, then move, and by the time that was translated from Japanese to English and onto, worldwide level, that's what we got, of course, was Chademo. We had to make a decision in our case because the JUMP Smart Maui project is really the dominant force in terms of what's going on this island right now with EV infrastructure. And we asked early on whether it was possible within the scope of that program to have other level 3 chargers besides Chademo. And the answer really came back no, that this was a particular test that they were planning on Maui and, really that they needed to use the model of what they'd done on Okinawa. The last bullet point here is important to understand because this is a change from where we started in 2011. At that time, the Chademo standard was out there, units were available, but it was kind of the industry leader and viewed as having, I think, a decent chance of really keeping momentum and becoming one of the dominant standards across the board. And also, we were hoping that it might become a Korean standard at the time as well. What's happened since is that it really looks like Chademo is going to be a Japanese market standard, and then, of course, some of the places in the U.S. where we've got fast chargers in. We have had some discussions with the Korean government on their project at Jeju Island, which is an island with a lot of renewable energy demonstrations, kind of like Maui. And they've told us they are doing quick chargers, but not on a Chademo standard. We've also talked with some Chinese officials and gotten the same answer that the level 3 standard right now in China does not look like clearly a Chademo thing. Let's go on. Okay. No, it's okay. We were over in Japan, I guess about 10 days ago, and the reason was that the mayor was giving one of the keynotes at a Smart Cities conference. And I'm just showing you the Hitachi booth because we happened to walk up at the time that his visage was up there. So go ahead to the next slide. I wanted you to see this because this is sort of Nissan's proposal, I guess, to people on Maui about what kind of an EV might be available to do more than a Leaf can really do. And for the county, early on, people had ideas about where we might be able to use EVs in our own operations. For example, one of the early ideas was the Meals on Wheels fleet. And if you know the Kaunoa Senior Center over in Paia, you know that They have a little fleet of vehicles that operates out of there and goes and provides, Meals on Wheels to those that can't leave the home. What we found, we brought a leaf over and asked the people to see if it would work, and they literally found that the packaging in the containers that they use wouldn't fit into a leaf. So we've been stuck for a while on some of these uses, and we've asked repeatedly, is there going to be some opportunity for other kinds of vehicles here on Maui? And I guess, it's not for us to say what will eventually come, but this is the vehicle that's kind of being presented to us. And we did get an opportunity to drive one as well. Let's go ahead and to the next slide. So here's just a side view. Basically, this vehicle is being configured, in this case, as a passenger vehicle, but the one we drove was configured as a cargo. I guess the thing that's maybe an issue today is that the battery pack is really, at least for the concept ones that they're having people drive, the same as the Leaf. So if we have a range anxiety issue today, we're not solving that by just driving a heavier vehicle. But on the other hand, in terms of, just driving around in the city, there's still plenty of torque, and all of you who drive an EV know that that's really a strength of EVs. Go ahead. This was a little bit of a surprise to us. So this also Nissan allowed us to test drive. And in this case, by the way, the white vehicle on the left is the cargo version of that NV200 passenger vehicle. But the one behind is this NT400, and that truly is an urban delivery truck. So that was a really interesting thing for us to see. We did get an opportunity to drive it, but again, what they're actually putting in there today as the battery pack is basically the Nissan Leaf. This is our mayor. It's a terrible picture, bad job, Doug, but our mayor is actually driving the test truck at the time. This is important. I wanted to show it to you because this is really, to us, where we need to go a little bit on Maui. So what I'm showing you here is from a demonstration project in Yokohama. And the reason it's noteworthy, other than just a good picture of the head of MEDB, Jeannie Skog, and the mayor, is that this is a situation where they were doing a public recharging station that was powered entirely by renewables. So on the right side of the screen, you'll see the PV that was in there, and then on the left, those are batteries. So this is really, when you get to it, more of a vision going forward of what we could do that could really make a difference. And our thought right now on Maui is that we have a number of locations where we are having difficulty interconnecting to the utility. But we have locations that are good for the production of solar energy. So as we think about concepts, one of the things we keep coming back to is to finding, the right place to do maybe some kind of renewable energy only charging station. Let's go ahead. You may have seen pictures of this. This is one of the Nissan mobility vehicles, they call it. And it's interesting to us, mainly just as another alternative view. This is a vehicle that's actually being made in Europe, but they brought it over to Japan. It's being licensed essentially as what we'd call a neighborhood electric vehicle, so not for full highway use. Also, much to my amazement, we were chuckling as we looked at this thing. This is really just a one-passenger vehicle, and there's a little shelf seat behind it. But as soon as we were convinced it was only one passenger, somebody drove up, and of course 2 people got out of the car. So in fact, it does hold 2 people. So let's go ahead. This is the back of that same vehicle. Again, these are just tiny, and it's an interesting view. They describe these as something that they could produce for $5,000 US, and in the right location, that is a really interesting idea. Something that could really bring the cost down, even if it's not a full substitute for highway vehicles. This is probably the thing I'm most excited about. Of course, it's the thing that's going to be the worst as far as a visual presentation for you. We want to talk a little bit today about lessons learned. And one of the big lessons for us is, trying to approach this in terms of passenger vehicles. Yes, it's very important for the community overall, but as far as what county government is really going to do where we can make a difference, buses are very interesting to us. So I am announcing today that we do believe we've secured a new project, and it's still at the early stages, but I'm going to describe it generally for you. The JUMP Smart Maui project is with an agency of the Japanese government known as NATO. That's an acronym, of course. NATO, in turn, receives all of its funding from another organization called MIDI, which is the Ministry of Trade and Industry. And Ministry of Trade and Industry is awarding a contract to another consortium of Japanese companies. So if you're used to JUMP Smart Maui, you're used to the Hitachi name being used as the lead company there. For this project, we think it's going to be Sumitomo. And Sumitomo is going to work with another company called Flatfield, and I'll give you their website at the end. But the buses that you're seeing on the right are among the buses that they've already converted and put in service in Japan. Some of these are pure EVs, and some of them are hybrids. It's kind of, well, this company's done 1,000 now in Japan that are conversions of one kind of fuel to another that includes natural gas and fossil units and pure EVs. What they're talking about doing for this project is their original model was that there would be a financial benefit, and they described it this way, that we want the buses available to hook up to buildings where they're powered under a tariff that includes a demand charge. So if you understand how the electric bill works, if you can control the demand charge, that will keep your bill down at least, 12 months, trailing basis. Let's go ahead to the next one. This is really talking about, what we're thinking about on this bus project. In general, this is the early stages. February or March of next year will be the final scope for the project. But what we're thinking right now, they've mentioned this business about demonstrating a business case with attaching to a building with a demand charge. Probably more interesting to us as county government right now are some of these other ideas. So the first one is mentioning, let's imagine a scenario, bad weather. And of course, after what just happened in the Philippines, typhoons, tsunamis are on our mind. We already have at certain of the kind of hardened facilities, like police stations and fire stations, backup generators. But there are another set of buildings that are kind of what we call de facto emergency shelters. Places like community and senior centers are natural gathering points, but we don't have them equipped with permanent backup generators. This is one of the ideas that we have, in the event of a problem. Let's imagine, for example, a tsunami, that the buses could drive, presumably upcountry, to somewhere that needs to be powered and provide enough energy to really run electricity and AC. Similar kind of thinking in the event of a real problem. We would instead put the buses out in open fields, provide nighttime security lighting and recharging cell phones, et cetera. In terms of the size of the batteries on these buses, they're really substantial compared to anything that's been tried here in Hawaii so far. We're talking about 100 kWh of storage and output in the range of 120 kW. So these are very significant batteries, and one of the things that we're kicking around also, water and wastewater pumping stations. Again, some of these major facilities already have backup generators, but we also just have a number of pumping stations essentially out in the country. They generally lack enough of a footprint for us to be able to put in solar. So the concept here, again, if we had it pre-wired and ready to go, is that in an emergency, as long as it's accessible, by vehicle, a bus could drive up and be available to keep the wastewater moving or the water moving. Let's go to the next one. So generally, what's the project status on this one? METI, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, has given their initial approval. The Japanese groups have to develop their budget and scope, and their internal deadline is February with a final decision due next March. The expected budget between $10 and $50 million. It's another major project, and as far as something that the mayor has really put a priority on, this is one of them. We've been trying to land another big EV project, and so we're really happy that this looks like it's going to go forward. The way we're expecting this to work at this point, there would be a companion demonstration in Waikiki of probably electrified trolleys. And then in terms of Maui, we still have to figure out whether we want some fully EV ones, whether we want to blend with some hybrids. When you think about the civil defense function, the ability to refuel could change these from something that basically, gives you 24 hours to something that could give you a week. And so we don't have a final answer on exactly what the right blend of, EV, PHEV really is for the buses. And that's one of the things that we need to figure out. Okay. Talking generally about that distinction, I think we mentioned these statistics before. One of the things in the bottom here, just to be clear, we're also thinking about microturbines here that could be done with batteries. And each of these offers certain advantages in terms of fuel use. Biodiesel is another interesting opportunity. Right now, we don't have refinery with a large amount of capacity here on Maui, but one has opened now on the Big Island, and perhaps it's a model of what we could do more of here. Let's see. Great. I wanted to leave you, if any of you are interested, this is the website for Flatfield, which is the company that actually makes the buses. And we're going to be involved in a discussion with them about, what kind of buses could make sense. The thought is they obviously have to be ADA, but we're going to need to work with them on a lot of things that are Maui specific. The ability to carry surfboards is not necessarily something that, they are planning on in Japan. So, there are typical issues with the bus system, but so far, the department that runs that is supportive, and we're going to have to work with Roberts, who has a contract to actually operate the bus system. But it seems like, when we say lessons learned on all of this, I guess for us, lessons learned need bigger batteries. And so we could just wait for the technology to get better, or in our case, what we're saying is, let's go out and work with some equipment that really has bigger batteries and has the opportunity to do more, as far as a demonstration. I think that's really all I've got as far as a presentation for you. Thank you.
Okay. Margaret?
Now that I found this little button, I just wanted to mention that in terms of the Flatfield project, we as the State Energy Office recently met with that organization, and they're looking to do a similar project on Maui or on Oahu as well, and with the intentions to expand it to the neighbor islands. And I don't know which one's going to come first necessarily, but it's an interesting project, and it's would probably be the EV buses to the building, and they're looking at hotels on Oahu, and they're looking at different routes and the type of buses that they can use. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Doug. I just wanted to add one more thing, which is Doug didn't talk about the DC fast charger at the county, but I have to say it was a very important milestone for us, because the knowledge that there was finally going to be a DC fast charger sent a signal to the county's support for EVs. And a lot of people then decided, I know there's one person, Leanne Ball in the audience, decided now it's time to buy a Leaf because there's a fast charger. And being centrally located in Wailuku, it served us very, very well because it was a year later that we got the JUMP Smart Maui fast charger. So for about a year, and it's still working. And also it has a level 2 charging station next to it, which is also free, which meant the Volt users can also use that. All right, I'd like to introduce Troy Konatzer, customer designer at MECO, and he's going to tell us about how MECO has been supporting and continues to support, and EV is a huge part of their plans for the future. Troy.
Thank you.
Oh, laser. Do you need a laser?
I don't think so.
All right, thanks.
Aloha and good morning. And I'd like to start, first off, from Maui Electric. I'd like to also thank Ann for her tireless efforts in organizing these events and the unique opportunity you've had to really bring the industry stakeholders together and to make these events work. This morning,
Do you want to dim the lights? Shall we dim the lights again? Is that easier for everyone to see? Or okay, all right.
okay, I want to briefly talk to you this morning about 3 items. Basically, why we want to promote electric vehicles as a utility, and then what we offer currently to our customers, and then where do we go from here? And as far as why, I want to talk about just a basic promotion of the greening of the transportation industry, and then want to make mention of my last bullet there, that the electric industry and the electric vehicle industry and the utility industry are both on a parallel path as far as the overall greening of energy usage in the state. And okay. And then my next slide here, I wanted to show this is basically a power usage curve for an average circuit. And you'll notice in this off-peak period, overnight we have a low point, and then that peak rises steadily throughout the day. And so even after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that peak somewhat levels off with usage, even though all of the PV that's being generated drops offline. So this slide really demonstrates the need for off-peak charging to be emphasized to our utility customers, because the flatter this usage model becomes, the more energy efficient our entire island becomes. Okay. And then I wanted to also mention a statistic here from Navigant Research. They're predicting by 2022 there'll be 36,000 plug-in electric vehicles on island, and they also project Hawaii in general as being a leader in that quest. And we'll look at the different rates that we have available. Our companies have been afforded the luxury to be an industry leader, really, in the just the sheer number of rates and that we've been able to offer in such a short time. And these tariffs are legal binding documents between the utility, Maui Electric, and the Public Utilities Commission. And I wanted to highlight our website. Of course, we've had a logo change recently, and we've changed some things around on our website. And I wanted to direct your attention down to where you can actually find electric vehicle information on our site. And each one of these tabs will take you directly to that tariff document if you'd like more information on exactly how those work. The first offering we have is the time of use EV. This is available to virtually any residential customer who has an electric vehicle registered in their name. So far, we've had 31 customers sign up to take advantage of this rate, and basically it gives them a cheaper electric rate over the nighttime period while they're charging their electric vehicle. And we also have I want to mention too, even net energy metering customers who are charging their vehicles on credits, when they change to this rate, they're able to generate power during the day also at that higher rate, that higher electric rate. And so they're able to generate at a higher rate during the day, and then they're able to consume electricity at night when it's less expensive. So it's really a double win if you're an NEM customer. The next rate is the EVR schedule, and I'll briefly go through this. This is for a resident who, if you'd like to put a separate meter on your house just to meter the amount of usage that you're using to charge your vehicle. And then we have the EVC. This is a commercial rate for businesses, and this rate started out as just a time of use rate, and there's some flexibility. If you're below 5,000 kilowatt hours, there's no demand charge for this rate. But this next rate is one of the rates that we're most excited about. Our EVF rate is really an industry leader in the fact that it allows commercial public charging stations to be installed that are separately metered, and it virtually eliminates the demand charge for these customers. So the load can be no greater than 100 kilowatt or kW, and you can also have 5 kW worth of auxiliary loads, say parking lot lighting or signage, and really makes it attractive. And I want to here again another slide of showing how our rates interact. Click it one more time, man. I want to bring into focus here the takeaway from this slide is that folks on the EVF rate, you'll see their power bill is lower up until they get to the 5,000 kilowatt hour a month range, and then there's an incentive to roll those customers back over to our standard utility offerings. And next we have our EVU rate. Our EVU is a pilot that allows all three of the Hawaiian Electric companies to put in a total of 25 DC fast charging stations. And we're going to be opening those to the public and do direct point of sale. This, I have the approximate charge down at $7. Right now, the off-peak charge is going to be $6.50 per session, and that's regardless of how long you're plugged to the charger or the amount of energy that you've taken from the charger. So the off-peak is $6.50, mid-peak is $7, and priority peak is $7.50. And there will also be a nominal network charge added, similar to the cost of using an ATM machine. And where do we go from here? Our first EV charger, DC fast charger, is going to be installed at our main office here in Kahului. And installation we're expecting by the end of December. And we're going to have a public opening and public ceremony and just a get together at our facility sometime in the first quarter. Maui Electric is working with other partners to locate this second location, but that site is yet to be determined. And then a little about our parent company. Hawaiian Electric is going to be installing 15 DC fast chargers on the island of Oahu. They've got a pretty aggressive route for sure. And also, we got a 1-year extension on the residential rate from the PUC, and we're going to use this next year to reevaluate the uptake of those rates by our customers and see if there's some incentive that we can add to add more value to our customers. And then finally, I wanted to recognize Wendy Shimizu. She's another customer designer with Maui Electric, and we're going to be here afterwards and be available to answer any EV questions you have. And I also wanted to highlight our website and our email address at evinfo@Maui Electric, and we'd be delighted to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Troy. What we could do is at the end of our session, we have some time left over, I'll ask the speakers to come up and answer any questions. Next, I'd like to introduce the Nissan USA dealer representative for Hawaii. Is that right? Okay. John Simbritz, I met him, I was introduced to him by Andy from Jim Falk Motors in June at the JUMP Smart Maui event. I just have to tell this story because I had just come back from UC Davis from the 2-day conference where some of the people there had said, oh, you know, we don't pay much to get our leafs. And I thought, how come you guys get it? You know, we're at Maui, we should be able to get a good deal like that too. So when I got introduced to John and I told him about that, he goes, oh, that's the VPP. Like, it's nothing special. And it turned out the VPP is a vehicle purchase plan program that's offered to actually over 3,000 organizations and all accredited academic institutions in the USA. So in another month's time, we got this flyer. It was offered to all all 10 campuses employees. So we sent that out, and now Maui College has got more leaves than I think Manoa. Is that right? Something like that. Anyway, John is the Nissan person, not the Nissan Leaf person. So if you have questions about other kinds of vehicles, he can also answer that. Right.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Anyways, yeah, I'm here. Thanks for allowing me. I've learned a lot actually about it. It was nice to see some of the pictures with the Leaf from abroad, so it's pretty nice. We've been here since the Nissan. We've been with the Leaf, even before the Leaf goes back to the Tama back in 1947. That was an electric vehicle that Datsun made as part of it. I don't know if you all know that. It was 1947 that we started. So it goes back, the electric vehicle goes back a long way. That's when they had to worry about the oil shortage. But anyways, we've had a lot of sales here. Been here for Leaf. It's a #1 vehicle, electric vehicle in the United States, over 30,000 vehicles. Over here in Hawaii, we've had over 1,200 Leafs sold since inception. 220 of those have been in Maui, so you guys have been doing a great job. So we have there. And even that, it gets a big percentage of our sales right now. It's really increased. So, I mean, to say what the segment and what people are adopting, you know, you have the early adopters and then you have the millennials. But you're going to come in right now, there's a lot of other people coming into the Leaf and getting accepted in the EV for all the hard work that you've been doing with all the charging stations and everything, getting over people's worries of how they can charge a vehicle or whatnot. So, I mean, already 13% of the sales the last 6 months have been the Leaf. So that's a large part to a lot of help. If you look at the next slide, we have you can see how much sales of Leaf have grown over the past year. This is nationally. So you can see this is what it was before, and this is where it is now. So you can see there's a lot of growth, 3 to 4 times sometimes a month what it was prior. So it's a lot of work across the country, not only here. You can see here it's a little bit lower. That was the kind of production. We kind of switched to the model year 14, so there's some people kind of waiting and whatnot. So that's kind of if you see the numbers here, that's why that is. But the big thing is here is on the islands, we're up 220%. For the Leaf from last year, calendar year to date. And then a large part of due to what you're doing over here in the islands is up 360% on Maui. So it's much more than the rest of Hawaii. You're kind of driving the state. And kind of driving the state with the charging stations and everything else in the grid program. You can see just here where Hawaii is in terms of Leaf across the country. We're #6. #1 market being San Francisco. So we're doing a great job here in Hawaii for as small as the amount of volume we do to be #6 in the country. That's a great job by everybody here, awareness and going for electric vehicles. Just some interesting things like little stats that we kind of keep track of Leaf owner driving habits, what we have. The average time that most people are charging is 3 hours. That's what level 2. The average trip that Leaf owners are going are 7 miles. Generally, people are using this as their primary car. Average daily driving is 30 miles. So just some little fun facts for you. Keep it going. I know that she was talking about the VPP and stuff. So these are the different trim levels we offer. So I'm going to show you a VPP price. So like for the accredited universities, that expires at the end of this year. Now, who knows whether they extend it or not, but it's until December 31st. That's how good this is. So if you go in and you want to go to Jim Falk, or you want to go over in Oahu and you ask them for the VPP for the things, make sure you tell them up front because it'll save you time and it'll save them time. It makes it easier because they don't know. When you come in, it's like anything else. So just tell them you're with the university, you want the VPP price, and it'll make everything a lot easier for you. So there's different trims of what you want when you start with S. You can get the S with the charger packing, then you go to SV and you get the SL if you want a lot more of the amenities like the Bose audio and the round view monitor. So just some little charges for you. Just for the charging times, you could probably come through. Right now it's about 4 hours when you have the fast charger, 7 hours with the old charger. With a quick charger now, it's down to about 30 minutes for about 80% of the charge. So it makes a big difference. So the quick charging and you're going through, it makes it much more accessible for a Leaf as a vehicle to get around the island because, when you're going, you don't want to spend 4 hours. You can go to the quick charger for 30 minutes. That's why how important these charging stations that you guys are working on going, because it makes everybody accessible to what we have going right now. Again, this is where the flyer I said, and you can ask. If you just ask them, they'll know. Basically, you get it under, your starting price will be $1,000 under invoice, and then you kind of go with your payments. So, and that includes, so just when you say that, like I see the $7,500 federal tax credit, some people think, oh, I get the VPP and I get the federal tax credit. That's already included in 207 price, so it's not on top of that. That'd be really great because that'd pay for the whole lease. But anyways, that's just some confusion. But there's a lot of applications when you think there's some things that, when we think we go green, other things that people have done, like in Microsoft and a lot of especially in San Francisco, they've been working with Google and stuff to have a lot of people with their fleet. If you have companies or something, I'm going to give you at the end here, give Jeannie Lamb, she's our kind of a VPP expert. If you want to start out, there's actually subsidies they can do for charging stations depending on how many people that you have for your particular entity, whether it's a university or whether it's a company. There's some ability to get some charging stations for free if you get depending on the number of people that you get driving a Leaf. So I'm going to give you her number because she's the person for that. But anyways, for example, if you had a fast charger, if you want it installed just from Nissan alone, you can get $10,000 if it's permitted by 2014, and you get a $5,000 bonus for December 31st. So there's some things that you can do, some money that we're trying to give back to kind of help your efforts, because without the charging stations and the grid project and to get all that going, everything doesn't work the way it needs to go. So, and I put up here, this is the one, and you can always talk to Ann, has her number, but Jeannie, she's going to talk tomorrow at the seminar tomorrow. She's much more expert when it comes to the nuts and bolts of the EV. I'm kind of more general with that. So if you have questions for me, I probably won't be as deep. And then the fast charger is David Peterson. But really, Jeannie, she can help you out with all that if you have questions. So anyways, I appreciate your time. This is really, feels great for me. I learned a lot today about different things, and it's always growing, and it's very insightful for me to appreciate all the time and effort that everybody goes through and do that. Sometimes people don't see that, and you have a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of time. But anyways, appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. You're probably wondering, what is this EV seminar tomorrow? This is a EV industry strategy conference, an all-day event. Unfortunately, we're completely full. We could only have enough room for 40 people, but already we have 45 people. And it's very representative, all 5 islands, and also Colorado, California, Arizona, even Europe, Tokyo. It's very just wide. And the whole purpose of that is to discuss how can we learn from what we've done and continue the momentum and drive forward with it. What are the next steps? So what we're going to do is to generate some topics in which we're going to form different focus groups. And then we're going to let everybody know you're welcome to volunteer to be part of a focus group. For example, one might be, what's the business case for charging stations if you're a property owner or manager? Another one could be, what about PV, EV link? For example, if you're planning to install PV, and then you're thinking, well, how do I regulate the usage of that? Well, EV is the perfect solution. Could I just find out if Liz May is in the audience? Okay, Liz is the general manager of 5A rental storage on the west side, and that's exactly what they did. They put in so much PV, they had extra electricity. What do you do with that? So they put in a charging station. Of course, it's not totally free. There's a lot of cost involved in trenching, and Doug can tell you about trenching costs. So let me just continue where I left off about lessons learned and best practices. Is Neil Wagner here from Kula? Neil actually gave up his BMW for a Leaf, and he remarked that, Leafs are not just green cars. They're just practical. And another person on the Big Island said, and they're fun to drive. So I think what we need to do is to outreach more. Otherwise, people switch off and think, well, I don't want electric then. We have to communicate that it's not just about the electric part of it, but it's the whole thing. And the other thing we noticed that it really takes time to understand an EV. And this is what was missing in a lot of our Maui EVA working group meetings, is we were talking about something that we had no idea what it was like to drive. Even if we were to sit in there as a passenger. I mean, this was at a time when EVs hadn't really shown up. The Nissan Leafs didn't start arriving till about May 2012, and if you were to get your hands on one, you had to order it online, and there was a waiting list. Okay, so you had to know what you were ordering. I guess the same thing is now with Teslas. You order online, but so before you order, you want to know what it feels like. You want to be able to test drive it. So we encourage people to really go rent one and test drive it. Not just drive it for an hour or a day, but for a week or two. And then you could do this in Oahu at the airport. Enterprise they're the first to bring in EVs in the state. And also you need to experience charging it. Yeah. I had the opportunity to borrow one for several months from Hitachi, and I really only got rid of my range anxiety after a month or so, right? And even so, I noticed my whole decision-making had to do with my car. It's like, if I'm gonna go to the west side, I'm gonna choose a place to eat where there's gonna be a charging station, okay? So it's like, well, the Ritz, they've got a charging station for free, so that's as north as I can go. All right, these are the things that you think about. So, and one time I had to go up to Kula to go to a party, and it's like, can I really get up there? Kula is big. Which part of Kula was I going to? And the steeper you go, the faster your battery starts draining. And so it takes a while. I have to say, Chuck Carletta in the audience, would you raise your hand, Chuck? He's one of the earliest adopters, and he lives in Kulakai, and he appears in one of our earlier Maui EVA TV episodes. And he said it's not a big deal, but then he meticulously monitored everything on a spreadsheet, right? So he knows how much he's using PV and EV, and he's had time to get used to it. If you're brand new at this, you might not be comfortable immediately. So I really urge you to test drive it for a while. And then the other thing I want to say about lessons learned is there's a huge difference between potential versus real stakeholders. When we formed the Maui EVA Alliance, we had what I call potential stakeholders because nobody really had a stake in it. I mean, you have a stake in it when you invest in a charging station, okay? You have to put money out when you invest in an EV, all right? Otherwise, what's your stake? So a lot of people came to our meetings to kind of learn, right? And decide whether they're going to put a stake in it or not. Right? And that's a very important point because there's a lot of learning that takes place. There's no training on Maui. You just have to read. There's loads of reports. They're all publicly releasable. They're on the internet. There's loads of forums. Take the low-hanging fruit, go to these EV forums. There are questions being asked. You learn from each other. And we have something else which is called the clustering effect, neighborhoods and workplaces. And here at the college, we find it in departments. If one person buys, his or her colleague buys it. It's almost like a kind of validation. I trust that person, so I'm going to get a leaf. Same thing in a neighborhood. They've got a leaf, so you ask to try it out. And then, so we have, pockets of EV owners. And the next one we really believe in is when you've put in a charging station, it would be really good for people to know that it exists. I know that in the beginning, a lot of properties, hotels and all that, they put in charging stations because it was out of compliance with the EV, with the state law. So they put it in, and then nobody knows it exists. Not only that, the staff don't know how to work it. So you could call a hotel, you could be speaking to the operator, the receptionist, the front desk person. You could show up, speak to the valet, the bell captain, the concierge. You know, when you're staying at a hotel, you could be speaking to the maid, the restaurant owner, the waiter, waitress. They all have to know that there is a charging station, all right? Just for tomorrow, Honua Kai, we have about 6 EV drivers who will need charging, okay? So I sent an email to the chief engineer to say, watch out, they're gonna show up. They're gonna be asking to charge. You know, so this requires some kind of training and awareness. So what we recommend is that if you're gonna put in a charging station, please do a press release. Let people know about it. The county did one, and a lot of people came. We had 3 or 4 film crews, and Maui News was there, and you know, it was all over the news, so people knew about it. Do a blessing. And then after it's open, we encourage you to offer it for free. Okay, now it's almost counterintuitive because you spend so much time to make decisions and so much money in the trenching or whatever you had to do, and now you're telling me to offer it for free? No way, because I'm gonna spend even more money on electricity. Well, we're saying this because by making it free, at least in the beginning, people will hear about it, know about it, and it would welcome them to use it, and then you could learn from it. The Airport Beach OpConnect charging station, there was no press release, but it was free. So one of our earliest adopters on the west side, Don McLeish, he showed up because he lived nearby, and out of curiosity, he tried it out. But it took a while to figure out, you know, which of the options can he use, because it was so flexible. There's email, enter your email, you get a free charge. Use your QR code from your iPhone, you get a free charge. Become a member, get an OpConnect card, or you can even use a credit card if you want to. I mean, right now there's no charge. So it takes a while. And then as a charging station host, you can learn from that, yeah? You can learn from the users. The user experience is very, very important because what we have now are all sorts of barriers. We know that Better Place has gone bankrupt, and when they did go bankrupt in March, they had extra fobs, but that wasn't enough because we had a surge of new EV owners. So the 7 locations that they have Better Place charging stations, if you don't have a fob, you can't use it, even though they're free. Okay, so we have a phenomenon that has gone on, which is called icing. So you have the gas car owners, they know about this, so they just park there. We really need a way to, you know, there's so much that needs to be done. All right, so let's talk about some of the hot topics. All right, and one of these hot topics we'll talk about tomorrow is no longer about range anxiety, but interoperability. And what that means, one of them is at different levels. And Brett Hauser, president of Greenlot, he's here just today and tomorrow, is that right? Their company is one of the leaders of pushing for interoperability standards, or which are called open standards, yeah? Open source, so that they're compatible. So if Better Place had this, then with their bankruptcy, we won't need such proprietary fobs, all right? And I mean, right now they're not, all these different companies, they're not compatible with each other at the front end, but at the back end too, the software and data level. So this is being worked on at an international level. The next is what Doug McLeod mentioned about the standards. You know, this is a very important question because we're talking about infrastructure investment. It's not one of those things you can undo. So if you choose the Chademo standard, what happens when cars that require the other standard, the SAE combo standard, or the ones from China or Korea come in? Do you undo it? You can't undo it. You know, even with the Chademo standard, means if you drive a Volt, you cannot fast charge it. Right now, only Leafs and the Mitsubishi i-Meavs, but we don't have a dealer on Mitsubishi dealer here on the island. Okay, and then the other thing is compliance cars. We hear all about the Toyota RAV4 EV. Well, that's not coming here. Hawaii is not a CARB state. We're not part of the whole zero emission standards that California is leading on. All right, so how are we going to get all these different models to come here? And then the PV to EV link. We really think that once the issues with PV is resolved, will open the floodgates to EV. Yeah. Sean, who's an AOAO engineer at the Whalers, he's got PV, and he said, right around this time every year, we've built up so much credit. We switch on our air conditioning because we don't want to give credit back to MECO. We don't. We rather switch on air conditioning even if we don't need it. So what did he decide to do? He got an EV. And EV is such a better regulator than air conditioning. All right? So we really think it goes hand in hand. Now, California did a study and found a 39% correlation between PV and EV. We think it's even higher here in the islands. Okay. And the final one is business case for charging infrastructure. I was talking to Peter Liu, who's in the second row, our social media consultant and guru, yesterday. And he was saying how there's a new cafe in Kihei. What's it called? Cafe Carmen. And they want people to know that they exist, but it's really difficult to find. So the owner was thinking, what if I put a charging station outside? Will people then come and eat here? And I thought, that's great. This is how businesses should be thinking. Instead, they're thinking, oh, I've got to put in a charging station, otherwise, I'm not complying with the state law. We should be thinking the other way. And Jim Burness in the front row can tell you that there's studies of how businesses are actually getting customers not only to come to their business, but stay longer and spend more money. All right, so I'm not going to go through all the recommendations, but our report is online. I know it's 105 pages and looks like a PhD thesis, but Susan Weish in the back, who wrote the grant, she and Celine Lagarde and I, we spent this time last year cranking this out, and we worked very hard to make it to 8th grade level so that it's easy to read, even though it might not look like that. And every chapter has got different topics and different recommendations. And the last chapter, we have a whole recommendation chapter by stakeholder type. I would very much urge you to read it because it's been the result of a lot of meetings, a lot of participation of the local community and the experts outside of Maui who have come here to help us. And just a little bit from this report. This is a 36-page report, also available from our website, EV Paradise. This is a result of Ethan Elkine, who is the Climate Change Policy Fellow at UC Berkeley Law School. We spent a week going to all the different islands except for Lanai and sharing the results of this report with different stakeholders on the other islands. And to our surprise, they said, oh, we need a Maui EVA. We need you guys to come and help us. So we decided to put together their issues. So this is an island-by-island account of what everybody needs. And some of the commonalities are, one, insufficient charging station infrastructure. Doug Teeple, the president and founder of the Big Island EV Association, he appears on our 14th Maui EVA TV episode. He said, in Oahu, it's a charging station every 3 square miles. In Maui, it's every 37 square miles. On the Big Island, there's a charging station for every 300 square miles on the Big Island. And he's only met 3 other drivers in his association. They cannot physically get together to meet. Isn't that amazing? I think that's pretty amazing. And the other thing is limited supply and public outreach. A report just came out yesterday, but it might be outdated now because it appeared in an academic journal and through all the referee process. Energy Policy, which is a highly respected academic journal, it said that limited supply public outreach. This was a year ago when they did the study. And I have to say, it's still the same. There's never a shortage of outreach. there's never what's the opposite word? There's never too much outreach. Never too much outreach. And I was very glad to see that even in an elderly housing area. I was visiting my mother a few months ago, and a lady just asked me about the EV I was driving, and we could carry on a conversation like we were talking about apples or oranges. It was amazing. But that's what we need to continue to do that. Another one is the high upfront cost of vehicles and electricity charges. I mean, right now, I dare say, if you have PV and you have EV, that's a great combination. Or if you could get free charging at work. Our college, thanks to Michael Snyder's group, Heaven, we finally got our first charging station. And it's being used every single day. It's just a level 2, not networked charging station at the auto shop. And it's a lifesaver. And Johnson Controls, they have purchased for us the charge point. Is it 4 dual port? 8. Four dual port. And so once the solar carport is installed, we'll have those. And already we know that's not enough, right? You're putting aside budget to buy more, right? But at least the conduit is there to install more charging stations.
Plus, we're putting in 36 level 1.
We're putting 36 level 1s. Wow. Outdoor outlets. Fantastic. That's what we need. All right. And then level 1s. Okay. All right. So here are just some of the suggested solutions. This report, the writing came before a lot of, the new rates and renewals happened. Fleets. We have a fleet expert, Kelvin Kohatsu, in the back. Kelvin, would you raise your hand? And if you have a fleet, I highly urge you to speak to him afterwards. This is an area we really need to ramp up our knowledge on. And then how do we, the third one, that's an area I really need to know more about. Encourage greater adoption of commercial and residential solar by removing restrictions on net metering. I think that's a loaded recommendation. So I think what we need is a separate group to look at that, the PV, because I still don't understand it. I just know that a lot of discussions about EV is really an economic one, and I don't mean costs, I really mean game theoretic. What I mean by that is things like asymmetric information, property rights, transaction costs, and the fact that you have to ask for permission to plug in, whereas you don't need to if you plug in your cell phone, It's a huge difference. What's the difference, right? The fact that if you park to charge and you finish charging, but you don't remove your vehicle, and somebody else comes along and they can't use it, what do you call that, right? I think there is a word for that. I don't know what it is in economics, but pardon? What's it called? I don't know. Maybe just etiquette. Squatting. All right. An income opportunity, right? I mean, I think with the, how is it? Half of the people who open our monthly newsletters actually open it on some kind of mobile device. I really think that it's about time we use our mobile phones to kind of let everybody know, right? So before you get there, you know that charging station is going to be available for you. You know there's a space to park. Why do you have to find out only after you get there? Yeah? And why do you have to drive to another place to find out the exact same thing and use up all the power that's left? It shouldn't be like that. But it might take a while before we get there. So what I'm going to, and I want to thank our speakers, John, Troy, Doug, Margaret and June, and also our special guests that have come here, especially from outside for our meeting tomorrow. And also, last but not least, all of you, Maui EVA stakeholders and new stakeholders, I hope, for coming here today and spending your morning with us. Thank you very much.